In this project, I'm going to be creating a base for this cauldron that I've been using in my yard for the past couple years. It's just a planter from the at-home store, and this is a tree skirt from Walmart or somewhere. I believe I got it on clearance at the end of last year. So I'm just going to flip my cauldron upside down, place the base inside to make it fit. I have to make it smaller. So I'm going to drill a couple holes in there with a 1/4 inch drill bit and just use some zip ties to hold it in the position that I want. And then I'm just taking a Sharpie marker, marking just a reference line, kind of a rough idea of where I need to build my base up to. And once I'm done with that, I just set aside the cauldron and grab a large piece of cardboard and then go around and just trim off those zip ties. And then I'm just going to grab a couple pool noodles and a razor knife and my heat gun. And in this step, I'm creating some logs. So you just want to cut some random lengths of pool noodle. And then I just take my razor knife and cut in about a 1/4 inch, just enough to score the outside, and just put a bunch of horizontal lines. And I put a couple extra around the tips, just so that way when I heat it with my heat gun, it'll make it not so square, give it a more natural look. And just do that on both ends. And you can always come back and add more once you heat it up if it doesn't quite do what you want it to do. And I put quite a few lines in here, crisscross them a little bit, kind of overlap them, try not to make them all just super straight. The whole point of doing this is when we hit it with the heat gun, it will create like a bark texture and make it look more log-like. So I just grab my heat gun on a high setting. You might want to wear some gloves for this if you have small pieces. They do get pretty warm. And just keep going over it, and eventually the cracks will start to spread open and give you that bark type texture. And don't be afraid to overdo it. It takes a lot to really to completely melt the pool noodle. You just do it until you're happy. The more you heat it up, the more these lines will spread out and open. And I used about 3 pool noodles for this project. You probably want to use like an orange or yellow or even a red. That way when the lights shine through it, you'll get the the color will glow whatever color the pool noodle is. So you don't really want like a purple pool noodle. And I grabbed some foam skulls that I had using a Nightmare Maker mold. I'm just trimming them up with a handsaw. I'm just getting rid of any excess foam. And then I'm also basically cutting the face off of the skull. You could throw the whole skull on there. I don't need the whole thing. I only just need the face part. So I'm just trimming it up so they don't stick out as far when it comes to the final product. Yeah, one thing I tried to do with the lights I had, it had a really big plug on it. So I tried to take a wire and I was going to string the logs onto the lights. And it didn't work out so well. What I ended up doing was just cutting a slit down each log. And this allowed me just to open them up and snap them around the string of lights where I wanted. For this next step, I had about 3.5 cans of Loctite spray foam. This first can was a little bit older. I was having some trouble with it sticking on the metal ring itself. So I just built up a ring about roughly about 6 inches of off the base of the tree skirt. You can make this as big as you want, depending on what you're going to stick in it. And just go around the whole thing, building it up. And this new can, it sprayed out much better and it was pretty sticky, so I was able to get it to stick to the metal. Once I was happy with the amount of foam I had, I started placing my lights into the foam and some of the pool noodles. These are orange LED lights. I'll put a link down below. It's a 50-foot strand. I actually had about 100 feet of them, but 50 was plenty. So I only used one string instead of two. And I put about half the string, just laid them around randomly in the foam. Once I got about halfway done, I started snapping my logs onto the lights. Once I had filled up some of the space with the logs, I added the skulls to the pile and just stuck them in kind of randomly, but this is going to be visible kind of almost 360, so I did want to spread them out where you could see them all over. And then once I was happy with the skulls, I just finished up placing the rest of my logs and the lights. And then when I ran out of lights, I went to the bones, started sticking the bones just in randomly in some of the gaps, just wherever you think it looks cool. And these are, I think this was one of those bag of bones from Home Depot and some leftover pieces that I had. I think it's relatively cheap for the bag of bones, maybe 10 bucks. And one bag should be plenty for a project like this. And then once I was happy with the way it was looking, I just took another can of spray foam and went around and filled in all the gaps. I was trying to really pay attention and cover up any of the lights that were still sticking out. I didn't quite get them all, so I had to go back in and push them into the foam, which got a little messy, but you just want to get everything covered. You don't want the bright light shining through. You want the glow of it coming through the foam. And just work your way around until you're happy with it. And overall, I used about 2.5 cans of foam on this project, and it's probably larger than most people are going to use. So I think 2 cans of spray foam would probably work well for most size cauldrons. This one's pretty big. And then after that, just spray it with a little water and give it a few minutes to skin over. And then just walk around and push in all the foam. I guess you could leave it the way it was, but I didn't really want it bubbly looking. I wanted it more look like ash. So I just pushed it in, kind of blended it into the bones and blended it into the wood logs. And then after about 20 minutes of dry time, I had turned off my shop lights because on these next steps, I'm really concentrating on the glow that's coming through the logs and the foam. I grabbed some red spray paint and some orange spray paint, and I just went around and hit everywhere where there was lights. Because the way the texture of the foam, there's some gaps in there. The red and the orange are going to fill in those gaps, and that way it'll look like it's a flame even in daytime. I put on the red a little bit heavier, and then just kind of sparsely put in the orange just to give it a little mixture of color. And on this next step, I grabbed my latex paint. This is just Oops paint from Home Depot. I've been using it on a lot of projects lately. And I'm putting a relatively thin coat, multiple thin coats on. The goal here is to try to tone down the amount of light shining through this. I really want it to just look like there's a few embers or coals burning. I don't want the whole thing to just glow like a bright red. So you just work your way around, pay attention on the logs just to paint the outside and leave a lot of the cracks showing. That's where you're going to get your more natural glow from. And then I just worked my way around the whole thing till I was happy with how much paint I had on it. In this time lapse, you can kind of see a little bit quicker how it darkened it up. And just, use light coats because it's real easy to add more, but you can't really take it away once you put this on. And on this next step, I grabbed some white spray paint and a little bit of brown spray paint. And I'm just going around with the white, hitting all the bones, getting those to pop back out and cover up any of the red or gray that I might have spilled on there. And then when the bones are done, I come back and do the same exact thing with the brown. And now that I have the lights back on, I am just taking some brown acrylic paint mixed with water in a spray bottle. Just what I had left over from a project. And I'm going to put like a brown wash over the entire thing. And this is going to help grunge it up a little bit, kind of tone down the bright colors. And just helps bring out a little bit of texture in the bones and the skulls. And then when I ran out of brown, what I did was I mixed up some black acrylic in a water bottle, a spray bottle with some water. I went and put a pretty heavy coat over the entire thing, especially on the logs. I wanted to tone down the brown and bring out that ashy look. And when it came to the bones and the skulls, I went back with a paper towel and just dabbed them real lightly, just to help keep the bones a little whiter. And once I was happy with that, I grabbed my cauldron, and I wanted to do a little bit to kind of grunge up the cauldron. So I took some Gorilla Glue, mixed it with water, Basically painted it all the way around the top and a little bit down the sides, just to make it a little grungy and kind of foamy, bubbly look. And this really is an easy project, guys. If you want to give it a try, or if you have a cauldron that you want to upgrade, this is something that's very simple to do, and I did this whole project in a couple hours, and it's a great one for kids to do too. And then once I was happy with the light coat, I came back with some heavy drips and just put quite a bit of foam all the way up at the top, and then just kind of let gravity do its job and create larger drips coming down the sides. And this takes about roughly 45 minutes to dry. And then once all the Gorilla Glue had dried, I grabbed some fluorescent yellow and fluorescent green paint, mixed them together to make kind of like a slimy green color, and then just proceeded to paint that on all the drips. I was trying not to get too much on the cauldron, but I wasn't that worried. I kind of was just doing like a dry brush technique. And then I just worked my way around the entire thing. And then once I was done with the green, I came back with some metallic purple and just went back and dry brushed over the top, just hitting the highlights of it, just to give it some variation in color, make it a little kind of funky looking. Depending on what it looks like under haunt lighting, I might actually come back with a lighter like yellow and add some yellow to this too. And now I just took that black wash and sprayed pretty good heavy coat over the entire thing, and then just came back and dabbed off the high spots. And this just helped make it look a little grungy, kind of bring out some of that texture. And once everything was dry, I came back with some clear lacquer. I think it was a gloss. It might have been semi-gloss or gloss. And I just sprayed the entire thing, both the base and the cauldron. And this is both going to help protect it from the weather and also give it kind of that slimy, wet look. And then for these final shots, I added a couple flame bulbs and a little smoke machine I had, and turned off some of my lighting. Give you an idea of what it's going to look like for Halloween. I hope you guys enjoy the video. It's a very simple project, easy to do on a weekend. And I appreciate you guys watching, and see you on the next one.